Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. Hope everybody's having a beautiful day. I hope the sun is shining. I hope the birds are singing. I hope the wind is at your back. From the spore-drenched carnival comes Dennis Walker, fungal harlequin, myco-orator, the satyr of satire, whose syllables ricochet with phosphorescent spores across Rolling Stone, Forbes, Wired, and Vice. He's the emcee of the entheogenic agora, the jester with a machete, slicing bureaucracy into punchlines, turning news into numinous nonsense and nonsense into gnosis, and across the fractal lattice looms Jacob Tell, architect of 216, a cathedral of sensation where sigils molt into serpents and data drips like honeyed hallucination. He is a chaos conductor, weaving brand into bardic incantation, circuitry into sorcery, and building experiences that are less assemblies and more apocalyptic apparitions humming with mythic electricity. Ladies and gentlemen, Dennis Walker, Jacob Tell, thanks for being here today. Appreciate it.
Best intro I've ever had, hands down, easy. Yeah. Yes. What's up, everyone?
What's up, guys?
Second best for me. when you weren't with me, Dennis, and he did it just for me, that was my best.
Goosebumps. Yeah. What's up, everybody? Thanks for having us, George. Always great to hang with this trio. This is a really solid power trio right here. Love Jacob as well.
Yeah, so stoked, man. Man, I just want to say a shout out to the entire psychedelic community, everybody in the chat right now that's watching at home. Thank you for being here. You know, let me start it off this way. Both of you guys I see as architects. Like, you have found a way to make meaningful content that feels like an experience. Jacob with 216, Dennis with myco-orator. Maybe you could just kind of flesh that out a little bit. Like, what is your sort of idea for making content these days? Let me start over there with you, Jacob.
Oh, man. I don't have an idea for making content. We're just trying to make a good event and
right?
A good community and plant roots in a physical, tangible space. And if we happen to capture some of that, content wise, then it's a win. Then we could check the social media box for the night. But it's been a challenge, actually, trying to figure out the cadence and rhythm of, we do these weekly events and we do these quarterly events. And then now apparently we're taking it on the road once in a while and doing these more national events. And so how do we balance all of that content? Meanwhile, trying to stay, connected with people like yourselves in the news of the world out there. So it's quite a pie chart of different content types, for sure.
Yeah. What's your take, Dennis? What do you think about creating content in this time right now?
It's a dialogue with your community. People say they create for an audience, but I create for my community. And that's what's going to carry you through. I think too many people with social media, they're so focused on metrics, on reaching the broadest audience possible. But to do that, you got to start with your community. And that's what I leaned into early on, as I realized I'm going to find my lane and I'm going to bring my friends with me in that lane, like Jacob and George and, all the many people that we're friends with. Yeah. That's who I'm creating with. And if that happens to reach a broader audience, great. But that's not the goal. The goal is to build niche, have fun, and build momentum. And like, for example, what Jacob's done with District 216, what you're doing with True Life, that is community incarnate right there. And I think that's where your focus should begin and end. And it should be about drawing people into the community, not just marketing to random people. And that's, a lot of people cut corners by paying to play. They want to increase the metrics. They want to show views and all that. And I think that's a short-sighted strategy, because kind of if anyone can do it, everyone's going to do it. And what makes your content different? But what makes my content different is that I'm having a conversation with Jacob. I'm having a conversation with you, with Caesar, with Carly, with these people. And then at the end of the day, that's who I want to take with me wherever I'm going. So that's my strategy.
It's so awesome. And I think it's a total testament to community. I remember a while back, you were a victim of the whole meta ban, but you came back stronger, better, on all levels, and that community just came raging back. So I think it speaks volumes of what community really is.
Yeah, everybody's been getting hammered by that. And it's just the laws of the game. I'm very grateful to Meta for bringing us all together in the first place. I think that gets lost. Do I like the censorship? No, but I don't think I wouldn't have met a lot of the people I've met and become friends with if it hadn't been for Instagram. That's where the myco community, a lot of the psychedelic community really came out of the woodwork. So it's that kind of double-edged sword, right? Like, yeah, I'm not a fan of the censorship, but I've met so many people I never would have met if I didn't start posting content on Instagram that I've turned into real life relationships. That's what you got to do. You got to take it from the internet, go to a District 216 event, go put a face to a name. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You know, humor seems to be something that bridges all age groups, it bridges generations, and it sort of is like this contagious feeling that makes us feel good about ourselves. I'm curious to get your guys' opinion, and either one of you can take this, but what do you think is the relationship between humor and the psychedelic experience?
Jump in there, Jacob.
I mean, I think it's yes, and right. We'll start there, but
okay.
We really have the philosophers of our day on stage, hopefully, maybe on screen now, but on a good night on stage, waxing poetic. But I think there's something really visceral about, questioning reality, questioning the world. Observationalists, these sort of approaches to comedy are directly psychedelic. I mean, when you're having, looking at the world around you and trying to make sense of it and trying to put a lens on it. I could say that Dennis here going on stage and doing a 15-minute set, or me puffing on a DMT pen and doing a 15-minute trip, you might have the same outcome from those two experiences.
Yeah, first of all, I want to shout out people in the chat. Shout out Jenny. Thanks so much. I saw Josh Moyer in here. We appreciate you all being here and part of the community. And I love making humorous content because it helps me therapeutically. And I think that's what it starts with. Like, the litmus test for me for what gets made is, am I laughing at it? Because I think with anything you're doing, if you come from that place of authenticity, it's undeniable. And if you find humor, that's authentic, something that makes you laugh. There's so much behind the scenes with humor. Like, what is a joke? It's grounded in culture. It's one reason why jokes don't always translate between cultures. Because if you're I learned this hosting exchange students, kids from Russia would tell me a joke from Russia and it's not funny, but it's hilarious to them. And I think that actually shows how far the psychedelic culture has come. Somebody told me that. I was in this meeting with an investor, which I don't want investment, but I'll take a meeting every now and then. And they were like, we see that psychedelic comedy, the fact that you can do it shows how mature the culture and the ecosystem is, because there's a shared framework. People understand what you're talking about. If Jacob's talking about puffing on a DMT pen, if you talked about that 10, 15 years ago, only a handful of people would get it. Now, a lot of people can relate to what he's talking about there. And I'll also mention, the real value for me for humor is not taking things so seriously. And we live in this timeline now where everybody wants you to take everything so seriously. Like, the world's out to get you. Everybody's bad. The other is scheming behind your back. And I think comedy really breaks those barriers down. And like, for me, I make a lot of these satirical and comedic reels and do stand-up comedy. And of course, don't be fooled. Sometimes I have hard times and I'll be racking my brain. I'll be like, I don't really feel like making jokes today. I don't really do it. And I had a very funny moment last night where I was like overthinking all of like, what kind of content am I going to put out? I got to grow my audience. I got to make sure it's smart. It's geopolitically relevant. I'm like overthinking. And then I'm scrolling through Twitter and I got to cuss real quick, but I saw this video someone posted of an ape taking a shit and then picking up the shit and throwing it. And I just cracked up. I watched it 3 times and it had 13 million views. And it was very humbling to be like, maybe I don't need to always be concerned about making the most in-depth, layered, analytical content, because we're humans, and something about seeing a monkey taking a shit and fling it is hilarious, and that's okay. And it's one reason I love South Park, because I think they walk that line so well. It's like really intelligent, really deep, but then there's also a lot of dumb jokes and humor, and that's the whole spectrum. And I think as humans, we're kind of dumb, like we're funny, we're intelligent, but we have the capacity to be really dumb, and that's okay. And we should celebrate that. Not everything has to be, I'll cap this thought by, some people I think look so deep into their psychedelic experiences, and that's awesome if you get something, but there's absolutely nothing wrong just with cracking up for no reason and having a good time. I think that's what it's all about. And that's where, like, these events we keep talking about. Yeah. How many times you run into someone, you don't even have to say a word, and you're just like, you're on the same level and it's hilarious and you get to share that together. So like, I think we should also make room for the deep parts, but it's okay just to have fun and laugh at a monkey taking a shit. That's totally fine.
It's so awesome.
Yeah. I was born and raised on dick and fart jokes. Come on.
Right. Right.
Go South Park.
It's such a great show. You know, it's interesting to see like the future of experience. Like we were all lucky enough, we got to go to Denver. Dennis, you got Global Psychedelics Week coming up. Jacob, you got the marquee event coming up, Death and Psychedelics. And it seems like we are sort of breaking into this new mold of getting out there and having these real experiences. And I can't help but get the same sense from like an old Dead show or a concert. Like there's such a cool vibe at these events, and it seems to be contagious. What do you guys think about when you think about the future of events?
Well, one thing I want to say, you just tied in from comedy to like a Dead show or improvisational, improv-driven music event. I've talked about this, I think, on a previous podcast with you, but like one of the core values and tenets of me and the manifesto that, was written kind of through my dad's passing and me channeling him after he passed is this notion of yes and.
Yeah.
And really that's some of the core tenets of improv comedy, improv music, and entrepreneurialism. When you're doing something like creating an event and creating a psychedelic social club, out of a pandemic, what the hell is that? You have to have that spirit of yes and. There has to be a sense of what is the best idea in the room, egos aside. Let's riff on that and see what can come out of it in terms of, oh, my first marquee event, let's have a comedian introduce the whole thing, go into a discussion panel, and then have a live band. Like, yeah, that's a run of show that I think is, akin to the psychedelic experience. So I love how we can tie that thread through each of these topics, each of these points you brought up, George.
I think it's all about the in-person events, and that's where I'm going to stack my chips, because we've become so digitized and so disconnected, and the pandemic really played a major role in that. Like when everybody was isolated and we were all kind of forced to do our own thing, I think it really amplified the value of in-person connections and community. Like doing online stuff is great, but I don't think it's a real substitute for in-person interactions. And one of the examples I've heard a lot of people have issues with psychedelics, mushrooms, with these events, is they can be so costly. But then I say, like, yeah, but you don't even have to go to the actual event half the time. Just put yourself in that town, in that area, in that nexus. You'll find a way. Volunteer. That is a legitimate concern people have, that some of these conference tickets cost $800 or whatever, but there's so many different satellite events happening. And so that's what we're doing with Global Psychedelic Week. Is the main event is online. That's November 3rd to 9th. And that's simply to connect everyone, because it's pretty impractical to have someone who's a psychonaut in Tokyo fly out to Denver or New York City and book flights and a hotel and food. Like only a very few number of people can do that, but everyone can show up online. But then we have an in-person component. So like District 216, I believe, is doing an event that's with Global Psychedelic Week. We've got the Shulgin Farm. We've got London, Amsterdam, Buenos Aires. So I want to see a future, as Jacob said, that's yes and. You do some digital stuff, but you need to have an in-person component. And I'll say it again, like I'm not getting paid by Jacob, but like District 216 is one of the coolest things that's happening. And they really made a mark with the Denver event, because they showed that people want this in different cities. And I tell people too, like, just because Jacob's doing it or I'm doing Mycopreneur, there's room for you to do it too. Why don't you set up a social club in Miami or New York City? I think there's so much low-hanging fruit there. I go out to Chicago to visit my in-laws, and people are like, you're in Chicago, let's do something. And it gets the wheels spinning. I'm like, why don't we set something up? Like, where's the Chicago psychedelic event? Where's the Tulsa, Oklahoma psychedelic event? And it doesn't need to have 1,000 people there. Literally, you start with 12 people. You can start with 5 people. You'd be surprised how often people will come out of the woodwork once they hear something's going on. Last bit I'll say is, if you build it, they will come. I believe that. People get so distracted by like the end result or whatever. It's like, you just got to do it. You have that conviction and that authenticity, and people are going to come and they're going to find you, and you're going to build something together. And like, look at what we're doing here.
It's so inspiring.
Consistency. If you're able to do that in our case, week over week, or if you're doing it quarter over quarter, month over month, doing something consistently, people will continue to show up and bring a friend.
And Jacob, on the 216 events, you have a weekly event too. Is that accurate?
Every Wednesday night, you can come if you're in Santa Barbara to we call it Evenings at the District House. And we have all sorts of formats of content. People, I would be honored to have both of you come down on a Wednesday in your own capacities and come talk on stage and, get grilled by our beautiful hostess and have to answer all the audience Q&A. But we have a blast, man. We do networking and we have snacks and really one-on-one connection with people in the room that want to be there. It's like, come meet a neuroscientist and talk to them about their LSD microdosing study out of the University of Chicago. And then the next week, come meet an indigenous shaman who's up visiting from Central America. I mean, it's that varied.
So this blows my mind. When we were at the Psychedelic Playhouse and in Denver, it's almost, and I think you used this word, Jacob, as like edutainment. Like it was almost like going to school in that not only were you learning and having fun, I don't know if everybody has fun at school, but not only were you learning, but you were also like buying into this community. Like you were there and you were part of the community, and like just the relationships that kind of flowed and you got to meet. It was seriously something new. Like we had Dennis doing comedy. There was Caesar and Alex and all these people giving panel talks to a live audience and there was music. It was like a blend of everything all in one spot. I think that's the future of like shows and entertainment and education. You can take the place of education on someone.
Sorry, can you hear me? I'm having a little audio issue over here.
No,
but,
it's on this end too.
Yeah, the psychedelic playout. Sorry, I'm going to just take my headphones off for a second, guys. I apologize. Hopefully you can hear me better now.
Yeah.
But we basically, that same model of edutainment we had from day one, where again, we had comedy, we had discussion panels, we had live music. It was kind of just that on steroids in Denver. I mean, our director of fun, Kat Walsh, she was managing 4 DJs on 2 different stages that night. Dennis was jumping between multiple discussion panels back and forth between our A stage and our B stage and introducing and doing like 5-10 minutes in between. But I think to your point, George, I mean, being able to be in there and a part of it, it's all experiential. I mean, being in the community and then being in that neuroplastic state where you can learn and then have fun to reinforce it and embody it. That's really what edutainment means.
Yeah. I couldn't help but take away too, and stop me if I go too far, but I kind of sort of got an Eleusinian Mysteries vibe from it. You know what I mean by that? Like so many people were there, so many people were getting like this experience, and then they were taking it back home to their communities. Is it possible to recreate the Eleusinian Mysteries with what we're doing?
What was in the beverage? Do we know?
I think it was Breeze.
Good answer. Well, then, yeah, if we've recreated that in a can, then we're already halfway there.
But wasn't it? I think it was more than the can. It was like everybody getting to share an experience that they could sort of interpret themselves and still feel sacred, I think.
One thing I want to hear from Dennis, sorry to cut you off, Dennis. One thing I just want to say is that truly, like, I think the role of, if we want to talk about divine feminine and masculine and these sort of concepts, like, I think the role of the new masculine is literally like, be a container and get the F out of the way. Like, truly, like, open up that space, be a container, allow these parameters to be set on what makes safety or what creates and get the perfect conditions for edutainment or whatever the objective may be, and then step out of the way and let the magic happen.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the Eleusinian Mysteries. I'm aware of them, but I will say that this model of the edutainment community psychedelic experience is clearly the present and the future. This is the future. So much of this research and clinical trials and the medicalized narrative around psychedelics, that legitimized in the public eye and in popular culture and the public domain, that legitimized psychedelics. You know, they had to kind of go through this rebrand in the public eye because the 60s, I think I wasn't around, but they sounded awesome. But
Yeah, they did.
That door got closed and it sort of alienated the population between like psychonauts who really got this and the general public who were left thinking that this is dangerous. Like my parents come from that generation where they weren't hippies, and to them, you know, the Nixon branding and the Reagan just say no, that was the law of the land. So all the research that's come out from Johns Hopkins, Harvard Medical School, Stanford, Imperial College London, you name it, that did so much and continues to do so much to legitimize in the public eye psychedelics. At the same time, I don't think that's a very viable route for most people. I don't have that kind of capital laying around. I don't go do medical interventions that are timely and costly. You know, I try to avoid those if possible. Yeah. But anybody can go to a social club and find a community of like-minded people. And I think that really can create these accessible pathways. Everybody in the psychedelic industry, quote unquote, talks about access. And the way they kind of are talking about access, they're talking about insurance coverage. But my insurance coverage is my community, because those are the people I lean into. If I need something, I'm not going to like go ask a stranger and sit in a weird room under fluorescent lights or what have you. That's obviously a cartoonish variation or version, but not that far off from what's happening. Like, you go the medicalized route, typically you're working with a provider, right? And they're part of a structure where it's capital and resource driven. That's why it's so expensive. You need a therapist time. That is a route that is for some people, for sure. I'm very on board with the fact that pharmaceuticalization and medicalization is a huge route. But realistically, in my life, most of the people's lives I know, that's not the route they want to go. I don't want to go trip with a stranger in a little room. I want to go out to a concert with my best friends, to a social club, to go see a comedian. And there's this concern, I think, with a lot of the more corporate agendas that like, oh, recreational use is dangerous. It's like, no, it's not. Like, pretty much everybody, like 99.9% of recreational use is is recreational use. Sorry. The danger comes for sure from not knowing what you're getting into, not knowing the quality or the purity, not knowing the set and setting. And that's where your community comes in. Your community comes in, and it's always been built into psychonaut culture. Ever since the first time I tripped or read about it, you're with people, you want them to have a good time. You want them to be safe. Someone's having a hard time, they're much more likely to listen to someone they know and care about than like a random person, you know? So, I mean, I've been through many, many experiences and been a part of these types of cultures for many years. And I've seen very few adverse events because people are doing it with their friends. They're researching it. They're learning about it. They're taking a small dose. They're tripping too hard. You put your arm around them. You find them a safe space. Like, this is what community is. That's what I'm getting at. And so these events, that is the model. These social clubs, 100%, as far as I can see, that is the model that's going to be viable. And that's where 99% of psychedelic use has happened and will continue to happen.
Man, that's really well said. I think it speaks to the volume too. It seems that, at least in my path, like, psychedelics have been a way for me to become the best version of myself, help me work through my own shit. And it seems like that's how we change from the bottom up. Like, the individual creates their best version of themselves. Then they find a community and make that community better. And then it kind of comes from the bottom up. And you start looking at some of these revolutions or some of the heroes that I looked to in the 60s. It was like this bottom up change where people were coming together and finding ways to create better education systems or better concerts or play better music. And do you guys think that maybe we're on the cusp of that? Are we in the late 50s and we're kind of getting ready to explode into this creativity masterpiece of the 60s?
I mean, I'll just say something about empathy because, you know, there's literally a war on empathy being waged by the administration running the United States of America right now. They're literally taking that chapter out of Goebbels and Hitler's playbooks and literally saying, like, being empathetic is weak. And this is not, you know, the value and tenet of humanity. And I'm sitting here going, at the end of the day, we all want to be heard and seen. Like, to Dennis's point about community, these are places for entire populations, entire subcultures, entire, you know, swaths of society to go be heard and seen. I mean, when you saw like what happened at the end of the 2023 maps, you know, speech where the indigenous population came on stage and took over the microphones and they just stepped back and let, you know, it was like, Rick Doblin gave them the stage to be heard and seen in that moment. That's kind of the spirit of the psychedelic community. And we want there to be like a place for people to feel heard and seen. We want there to be empathy. We want there to be these true, authentic connections so we can express ourselves, live in alignment, figure out what gifts we actually individually have and allow those to be expressed in their best way. I mean, that's, at the end of the day, that's the most powerful components I can see of having these communities.
Well, I'm so glad you brought up creativity too, George, because I think that's what, for me, psychedelics amplify. There's the sense of them being non-specific amplifiers, and creativity solves so many problems. So I look at psychedelics, and that's such an umbrella term, right? Like apparently ketamine, MDMA, peyote, like all of these things are psychedelics. So that's a separate conversation and one I like to have. But what a lot of these experiences do, I think, is they'll amplify creativity. And that's what you need to solve problems, to build community, to make money. That's the thing a lot of people are strapped with right now. It's like, life's so expensive. It's expensive to breathe. Get creative. Find people to, engage in mutual aid with, and start a side hustle. And that's really kind of the genesis of mycopreneurs. There's so many people who love mushrooms. It's a side hustle. They want to make it their full-time hustle, but they haven't figured out how to monetize it. And that's a whole other skill set. So I think sometimes like entrepreneurship, monetization, commerce, these get a bad rap, but you kind of need a lot of those angles to be viable for your community and for your projects. So if you can figure out how to get creative, bootstrap, make it work, to me, that's the most psychedelic thing possible you can do, is to say, I've become creative enough that I can have autonomy and ownership over my time and over my life. And I think that's like so many people that Jacob was just mentioning, they're entrepreneurs, whether you know it or not. If you're a DJ, if you're a comedian, if you're a writer, if you're that's entrepreneurship, my friend. It gets put in this box as being like this like slimy Silicon Valley thing where you're all cutthroat. Like, to me, that's not entrepreneurship. You look at a lot of cultures around the world, they're the most entrepreneurial people in the world because they don't have sustainable income. So you got to figure out how to hustle and like turn a rusty oil drum into a barbecue for the neighborhood or whatever. Like, that's what psychedelics do. That's what we need to get out of this little box that our culture is trying to be put in right now, about lack of empathy and the scarcity and the fear mongering. Like, creativity and empathy completely override that stuff. And so let's stack our chips there and let's have some fun.
Yeah, I think everybody at like between 16 and 22, when you first start, apple over here, I got this cup, I got a straw, watch this, you know what I mean? It's so funny to think about that aspect of it. But Mark Viola, Christian Grey, like, what I see you guys doing different than other people is sort of using influence by shining a light on other people. It's like a total mycelium network. Like, each one of you is going out and finding other people and shining a light on them. Like, that seems to be the future of entrepreneurship. And you had mentioned earlier, like, the Silicon Valley model in some ways is like centralizing and then just focusing, bearing down on this. But the open model, that mycelial model, seems to be one that makes everybody win. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, that's been in my DNA as far back as I can remember. If I've run a marketing and branding company for 24 years, and so video and photo people, like, I get so excited to shine a light on their genius every day in projects, and like, make them, bring them to the table and make on whatever it is that we're trying to achieve for clients. If you look at, like, working in the music industry and touring, we're always there to support the artists. When I started my own festival and started my own record label, all these things were like to support and shine light on others. Like, that's been definitely my MO. And same comes for doing all the entrepreneurial kind of like fast pitch and startup weekends and hackathons and all these sorts of events that we've done. It was always genius in a brain from the UCSB technology management program. Like, what are we going to see come out of that? So I mean, all of that, if you bring that full circle back to District 216, this is a place where I can be like, all right, Dennis, I don't exactly know how this is going to go tonight, but I know you can figure it out because I've seen your spirit and your comedy stylings and, you know, your genius zone. Like, go, like, do it. Let's, you know, if you need help from me, I'm here, but I know you got this.
Yeah, I mean, there's that saying that's like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's been the ethos of myco-host, a free, pay what you want online incubator for mushroom entrepreneurs to connect. And it's the simple fact that so many of us, pretty much all of us, are in the same boat, whether we know it or not. And if you're focused more on making sure that boat is going in a good direction, like there's this strength in numbers spirit. And especially with psychedelics, I think people forget how niche of a community this still is. There's a lot of people getting into it, right? The cultural momentum is strong. But you go to these conferences or District 216 event, you are never more than 1 degree of separation away from pretty much everyone else. Like there, it's remarkable how small the world and the community in regards to psychedelics and mushroom is. And like, we're not even an industry yet. People talk about the psychedelic industry. It's like, there's no banking, there's no regulation. Like, this is not an industry. This is a bunch of people who have shared passion and vision and goals. And the more you can support and uplift, you know, there's also this sense of like, I don't do things for transactionality. You just do them because they're the right things to do. And like, sometimes you see something in a person they don't see yet and they don't get it. Maybe they don't have the confidence, and everybody benefits from that. Like, I've had people, some of my sponsors, dude, shout out Microboost, gotta throw it on there. Dude, gotta love Bob and the whole crew. But it's like, pretty early on, I had no sponsors. I was doing this entirely out of pocket, as many people are. And then they approach me and they're like, we love what you do and we want to grow with you and we want to build. And like, having that in your corner, and then, you know, Real Mushrooms, same thing. That's a really big company. They saw what I was doing. They're like, we really like what you're doing. We like the way that you go about it. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, these people who really didn't need to support me have supported me and enabled me to grow and do this. I'll be like, yo, I want to help you. I want to, you know, I did that high times piece. I put some people in, and I plucked some very smart. I see you making content every day for like 30 people, and you're making quality content. Like, you just need that someone else, right? Why not be that person? Because then they're gonna grow. You never know where that's gonna go. And then I've got are like really premium positions, and they don't forget about that. You know, like, everything has become so transactional. My mushroom and psychedelic experiences have taught me. It's taught me like, you just help people and amplify. You don't want to give everything away, but I think that it is really valuable. And I actually just saw Paul Stamets, the most incredible, the oldest, biggest mushroom festival in the U.S. Way too expensive for me to have gone, but I got invited up. What differentiates humans from AI? A big part of it. And a big part of it is random acts of fission. Humans, that's where we really shine. It's like, I'm going to help you. And pretty much everyone is where they are.
Oh man, mic
Wow.
drop.
Not following that up. That was amazing.
Chat chiming in. They said, this one comes to us from Ranga. And Ranga says, shape the psychedelic conversation.
I'm going to take that one, Dennis, first.
Memes are really important in that they can convey so much information so quickly. Like, they're layered, and Yukovsky even said it's the densest form of information communication, because rather than reading a white paper, or you can get some interpretation and information and experience out of one image, one meme, who invented that term some years it's about viral, transmissible, and shared and to go viral. So how they reshape the psychedelic conversation, like from a very personal standpoint, you can consider a meme, but people started telling me, oh, those are memes. Those are just like video memes you're making. And if from my college, I hadn't talked to in 10 years, we're reaching out saying, yo, my friends in Cairo, what's that world? Like, so I recognize growth with me, because so talk about all through my take it without all the scrutiny tools, comedy ones.
Yeah.
With Dennis, ricochet, or leather, or maybe there's someone that makes a song. The land you brought up, Heaven News, yeah, that's kind of the Fox News fear, and to the nation, it's like discourse and dialogue and going into actual conversation around policy. No, this is about like,
To me, it brings up the idea of like symbology. It almost feels like it's like the evolution of language. And I think that ties in coming up with the ineffable or feeling or seeing something, but not able to put it into words. And it seems like the memes way more information to people through through a merger of imagery and language all in one shot, or who can just take it in. What do you guys think? It's true, man.
Yeah, I think like on the other side of that are intended in the sense I'm like, don't use Chat GPT. But I do think that I notice, and I'm partly responsible for this with fans are going down. So I think that's something that also psychedelics can really help with, a good mushroom experience. Like I advocate for people this time, maybe you want to have fireside ready to dial or something, but like I don't want my phone on. I've tried my trips, I think that's really what you're focusing on, is trying to find something inside of you, trying to be very, we're in a lot of with memes and short form content. It's like sometimes I'll scroll through an hour of TikTok or Twitter, no idea what I just saw. So I do think it's something we should be aware of, and I try to. I'm as guilty as anyone. not use my phone on Sundays, like the whole day, just be with family, or like not look at my phone for an hour after I wake up. I don't know, to see some real downstream effects with like the shortening of attention to the point where like companies are making ads that are going to watch a 30-second ad. So like, and again, like I'm coaching people, I'm consulting how to do this. Like, you want to convey as much. I don't want to destroy people's attention span. So I think every now and then it's a good idea to dial in and work on getting them. And I think that mushrooms and psychedelics can be great for that. Although sometimes LSD is too long. I do love it, but it's a really long trip.
You're telling me, baby. That's why 2CB is here for the win. Let's go.
And I'll say this too. If you should take enough psychedelics to be like, I can't even see what's on there. Just put it back down, you know?
It's like, it's not the function that anyone really uses that often. But it's just like, if we were to rebrand that, it's like,
Yeah.
like put the computer down, Tommy. It's like, it's not a phone. I mean, yeah, sure. I don't know where I'm going with that. So
No, it's beautiful. One hack we use in my house, I got a small daughter, and like for those of us that you have family, you got people always on their phones. One thing that we have found useful, you got to create something instead of consuming something, and that seems to change the behaviors a little bit, because at least then you're interactive. At least then you're contributing instead of just being like a blind container and soaking all this stuff in. But I think that brings up another point for me. It seems like messaging, like a lot of the people that I listen to, it's meaningful, and I'm starting to see it in like the ads and stuff. I think we're moving away from what I listen to, where I see Dennis come out there with some incredible stuff. It's more aimed towards meaningful things, and like that's what resonates. What are you guys' thoughts on the future of media moving from manipulation to meaning?
I mean, I put the responsibility on the viewer, and I really believe that we are at a deficit of media literacy in this world. And not just steal them at a young age, but then reinforce that individually of like, what does it mean to be media literate? How do you know what a source is? What what is actual journalism? What does that mean anymore? I mean, we can absolutely use long form content to make very incredible, authentic, beautiful conversation. But on the other side, I've seen long form podcasters out there use it as weaponize it and use it for propaganda and use it to get conspiracy theories out into the zeitgeist. And so it comes down to like,
that's where I think satire has a really important role to play as well. There's this idea of satire is to be so obviously bullshit and funny that people see it and then hopefully can exercise some scrutiny and diligence in the way they evaluate other content. And in many ways, we do live in a post-truth world. And so how do we grapple with like, well, that's an alternative fact. We disagree with that. And we see it everywhere. And I think that does get weaponized a lot. You get the whole like vaccine versus anti-vaccine. That's another just incredible example of like modern media literacy and both sides of this issue who are adamant that this is either a problem or the solution. And it's like and I think it's like that for a lot of things, that we live in such polarizing, divisive times where you have science happening, but then some of that science in many cases are always doing true science, right? There's a lot of money at stake with a lot of different agendas. So I think satire is great for kind of pointing that out and leading people to draw their own conclusions critically. I don't mind when subjected some critical analysis and thought to that, but there's a lot of groupthink happening, right? There's a lot of like tribalism, banding together, And we've seen that even happen with like psychedelics. That was a huge thing last year with the FDA decision. Just very strong disagreements, even in the scientific community, especially on the scientific and research community. So I think that satire is very important in that regard for this post-truth world that we live in, and for kind of navigating. I say they're like training wheels for navigating the information landscape. So you can look at things and be like, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. And I have no idea where we go next. But to the point of journalism, I do think like a lot of content can be journalism outlets. Like there was very little independent press in the 1950s, maybe a few, and then there were a few like central spigots. Some of these brands, like New York Times, it's like 130 years old, right? And there's other ones, The Atlantic, very old. They had like that. But today, everybody has a phone, and there's a lot of citizen journalism happening, and it can actually be very bewildering and confusing to try to figure out what the truth is. And that's where I think also psychedelics come in handy, because that's what I try to do, at least, is, if I see something, I know that this is a narrative I don't want to be involved with, I'm going to do some soul searching. I'm going to try to find the answer. I'm going to try to connect with the community of like-minded people, because there's a lot of narrative warfare happening. There's a lot of violence and so forth, and we're in the thick of it right now. So find something authentic and hang on to it.
Man.
No deep fakes.
Man, the older I get, the more I realize I don't know anything, man. And you start thinking. My kid went to school at this awesome school, and I was talking to this gentleman from Japan, and like he and I have radically different ideas of what happened in World War II. You know what I mean? And it's like they're both true. And I was like, that was one of the first times I'm like, dude, two things can be true at once. Much of that is true for everything. Both of these things are true. And we see it in that narrative warfare you're talking about right now. It's everywhere. How do you, let me just go to both of you guys. How do you discern what's true enough for you?
That's a great question. I mean, history is written by the victor, right? So we've always had interpretations of the world through that lens. But I think back to what Dennis was saying about psychedelics, or any sort of mindfulness for getting quiet and going back to womb-like states, whether that's through breath or meditation or getting in a float tank or whatever. But being just quieting that mind and being kind of mindful and being in that space, I think can allow us to find out what an inner truth for ourselves is. I want to be careful about when Colbert launched the Colbert Report, when he was playing a fake, Fox News correspondent. First episode out of the gate, you go on Wikipedia, it's from that first episode, he defined truthiness. This term, it feels right, therefore it's true. Truthiness. That was the whole premise of what he said at that time, Fox News and the Machine was based on, was that people felt something to be true, therefore it was. And I would just call in one simple request, which is for everyone to follow up on what the scientific method actually is and what this framework actually has provided humanity as we stand on the shoulders of giants. And, because you have a hypothesis does not make it a theory. We need to actually go back to the language and remember what theory means. It's gone through all the testing. It's gone through all these steps of the scientific method. People use that flippantly when they're talking truly about a hypothesis they're making. So anyways, I'll step down.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's very important to have a sense of integrity of the information, because two things can be true, but in a lot of regards, they're not. And what I really think happened was we have a bunch of overnight experts right now. And it's something that, again, lends to comedy really well. Like social media amplifies that, where everybody has a platform. And one of the jokes I liked was like, when the pandemic was happening, everyone became a virology expert overnight. Everybody, listened to one Joe Rogan podcast or saw an article or heard something, and they became a virology expert because of Facebook. And then when the Ukraine-Russia war popped off, overnight, everybody became a geopolitical expert. Everybody knew exactly the machinations that were behind this war and what we should do. And that's something, again, where I think satire comes in, because part of the joyous ride of my life has been letting go of this need to understand or know everything. And I have to recognize, like, I'm not a subject area expert in a lot of areas, but I found something that I can be an expert in. And that's something that I would never call myself an expert, but I can be one over time. I found you find what works and then you focus on that. And I also think that the world will let you know. So you have to have your viewpoints challenged by other people, because the people who know the least are the ones who are so sure that they're right? And you can't challenge me. And I think that's something we've lost, like that art of debate. So it's very valuable to be able to sit in a room and be like, you know what? I don't actually know very much about this subject. I'm not an expert on this. And unfortunately, that's not the way that our information landscape is working right now. It's working where you have to be an expert on everything all the time, and you have to have an opinion on everything all the time. But as you said, George, like, the older I get and the more I see, the less I know. And that's one thing that psychedelics and travel both do for me. I feel that way when I travel overseas, and like, we have this inbred sense sometimes of like superiority. We're Americans and we grew up in the greatest country on earth. And then I go visit Mexico and like my car breaks down. I have no idea what to do. And some humble dude comes out. He's like, oh, you don't know how to fix this? Let me fix this right now. And it's like that for so many things. So that's where the empathy comes in. So as far as like what's true factually, I don't really know, but I know that if I can show kindness to people, if I can sow laughter, make a room laugh, that is my area of expertise. And that's what I want to focus on, because we're in short supply of empathy. We have an overabundance of experts and authorities, and but we really have a short supply of empathy. And I think anyone can do that.
Man. Yeah. It reminds me of that great line from James Joyce that says, history is the nightmare from which I'm trying to awaken. Like, so we're all still living in the past. And like, one thing that I like at 216 and Mycopreneur and so many incredible people out there working in this field is that they're building the future, and they're doing it through this geometry of collaboration. And maybe that's what we need to focus on. We need, instead of worrying too much about the truth of what happened then about this particular, the maps thing, what happened about that, maybe we just got to work on building a better future. What do you guys think?
I mean, one concept that comes to mind is, ritual. And I think we have to be careful about, where ritual comes from, the origin of that ritual. And, I'm all about finding ways that we can have these rituals evolve. Like, we don't rip the hearts out of people's chest and sacrifice them at the altar so much anymore as some cultures used to, right? Like, these rituals can evolve over time. Like, we don't have to do the same acts now necessarily. So like, is there a framework in society in which we can pull and draw on, be it indigenous rituals or be it Americana rituals, be it familial rituals, and actually bring that into, like, say, a psychedelic social club context, or going to see Dennis do some stand-up, or whatever those, back to community and back to in person. Like, what are these rituals that we can bring back forward to help reshape culture in a more modern context?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Let me jump in. I got the people in the chat stacking up. I'm stealing all your guys' time. Sorry, everybody. This one comes to us from Desiree. Desiree from Palm Desert. Thank you for being here. She says, consciousness is a network. Which nodes haven't, she says, if consciousness is a network, which nodes haven't we connected yet?
I'll go there. I think there's a lot of altered states with a lot of real estate to explore. So for example, like Shulgin had over 500 compounds that Alexander Sasha Shulgin pioneered. We only know a handful of them, really. We know, like, okay, 2CB was his brainchild, and there's, of course, the analogs for psilocybin, like the 4-ACO-DMT, that's Shulgin. But there are lots and lots of other ones. And like one example, I think, is DIPT. I forget the prefix. I've heard of it. I've never come across it, but my understanding is that it alters your auditory sense. So you can hear things, have audio hallucinations. I mean, that's a broad term, hallucination, but all across the board, I'm very interested in that. So another example is like extended state DMT. There's a lot of research happening with that. We're like, what if you can stay in the DMT state for 40 minutes? And I've heard this guy, Carl Hayden, talk. He's a professor, I think, from Imperial College London, and he's been involved with the DMTX. And he's talking about entities giving him objects, that he's like receiving physical objects, and they're actually helping him in some way in his life. Like he's, essentially crossing between dimensions. And I don't want to mischaracterize what he said, because it was just something I heard 2 years ago at a talk. But the point being that I think there's a lot, you look at dream states, like there's a lot of phenomenology we cannot describe. We don't have the language to describe it. And for me personally, I'm going to hold room for there being things like time travel or co-location, remote viewing. Like I've seen enough in my psychedelic experiences to know that there's way more out there and we're just scratching the surface. And just imagine the fact that like this is all pretty new. Like some cultures have been using things like DMT snuff or whatever for years, but like the number of psychonauts and the access that we have to these tools now in our culture, we have no idea what's out there and what's coming, for better or for worse. So I think as far as like what nodes haven't been connected, there's a lot of real estate out there interdimensionally that we're really just scratching the surface of.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that one, Jacob?
I want to go in. Let's do like I heard it was like 70 minutes in that DMTX experience of. And one of the things they're trying to do in there, I guess, is like map the space, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Like mapping DMT world, or, can we get these same entities to show up multiple times? Can we have these same objects handed to us multiple times? Like you seeing the purple lady and I'm seeing the purple lady, and I saw the left side of her and you saw the right side of her, and it lines up. Like, is this really a space that we're going to have some kind of profound findings from? Like, I think so. I think it's absolutely worth putting research, energy, time, dollars into. And I'm so honored that there are serious people, psychonauts out there that are, being taken seriously in this way. And this isn't just being written off as some, just druggy culture kind of thing, as Nixon and Reagan's mantras would have us believe.
Have either of you heard of any studies or anecdotes or of people having like a shared psychedelic experience?
I've heard many anecdotes. I don't know that I've personally experienced that, but I've certainly heard of people talking about it. I would love to share some of the phenomenons I've experienced over the years, but I'll save those for another time. But I do believe when people have these experiences that we should give them some credibility, and we should look at that.
Early, like young LSD experiences, I recall oftentimes having the same, like you're just on the same wavelength. You're finishing sentences, you're seeing similar hallucinations. Did you see that too, kind of moments? Like, absolutely. I like have had many shared experiences, but whatever that means, and with other senses that we have beyond our five.
Sometimes I wonder, like in like when I take psychedelics, if I'm around people, I think I change people. The fact that I take psychedelics, how I am in that deep state changes my relationship to other people. So it has to affect them on some level. Don't you think that could cause a lot of chaos in like a clinical setting? Like if you, as the person that are taking the psychedelics, if you're changing the person that's viewing you, like how do you measure that? Like, doesn't that seem kind of like a problem?
Maybe that's why the FDA couldn't wrap their heads around a therapeutic model on doing a clinical trial with MDMA.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much we don't know. Like we have known knowns, known unknowns, and a lot of unknown unknowns. And I think that's the territory we're in right now, because by the same degree, like if these substances do open up channels, like think of the fact that there's just a bunch of 5-MeO DMT vape pens floating around all over the place. People are opening up channels all over the place. So there's again, I think it is important to acknowledge the risks of psychedelics. I think that they're very safe for the most part, when put in the right place. But I also have to acknowledge, like when I first became a psychonaut, I was very mentally stable. Now I'm loopy, but I'm fun. I take care of my work. I got my family and all that, you know, but I recognized that like I was in a very good position when I started this relationship, and that's been ongoing. And I don't know what it would be like if I was like later in life and destabilized and trying to address like a serious mental trauma. So I do think like recreation has its place for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the angles, and it's one of the causes for concern about like, you know, there is a potentially dark side. There has to be, right? You can't have all this beautiful light and wonder without having another side of that too. But that's again where the community comes in. Like community is so good. It can be very good at vetting those things and creating a safe space so that when you do have something hard come up or difficult, that you really have people who care about you to help you move through. Sometimes that's on the dance floor, you know, let it out, cry. Saw a great comedian, this dude, Mike, forget his last name, but a very funny guy in LA, talking about like healing from his trauma with his dad while on MDMA on the dance floor. And he's like, you're doing all these symbols. He's like, my dad tried as hard as he could. I'm so lucky, you know, and like, that's what it's like. Like, I think that the whole idea of like dancing, having fun, laughing, singing, somehow that gets put in a box as being like not serious therapeutic work. That is super serious therapeutic work.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think people like to get overzealous with like, you need to really dive in and you need to feel this. It's like, bro, you can let go of that stuff when you're laughing, having fun, crying uncontrollably. Like there's a great outlet for it. Let's build those structures. And I think that there's a lot of people recognizing that right now.
It's a yes and. All the modalities, it's a yes and.
The word medicine is kind of a tricky one. Like when I think of medicine, I think of centralization. I think of supply chains, and I think of it just cutting off all of those other outlets. It kind of strangulizes, and we just toss that word around like, it's medicine. It's medicine, you know. And I can understand why we use it. Like it's a great word for it, but in some ways, I think it restricts us from actually it gets in the way of recreation, or it gets sort of pigeonholed into like the seriousness of some level. What's your guys' take on plant medicine? Is there a better word than medicine?
Our medicine are drugs, and our drugs are our medicines. I mean, we got to flip that definition, really. I think it's like redefine it. Music's the medicine, community's the medicine.
Yeah.
Like we can use medicine in different ways.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a really good point.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting time right now because on the one hand, we want everybody to have access. And on the other hand, we have people who you could call charlatans who, you know, someone's looking for help and they're like, I can help you. I can teach you to microdose. And that creates a lot of power dynamics. So this is a conversation that a lot of people are having right now. Is like, it's unregulated and underground, a lot of this stuff. So ergo, it can potentially invite predatory behavior. And again, that's where community comes in, because as a community, like you should be able to hold people accountable. And I think that I really see that model as the way forward. As like, you could call it a church. That's a loaded word with a lot of baggage, but like the same idea is like, I have this group I belong to, I can go to them. And then if, you know, I have some bad actions, there's a bad actor, they're accountable to the group and the group expels the bad actor. Like the community is so important. I can't emphasize it enough.
I love that. And for me, like, I think it's part of the seeking, like, because it is underground, like, you know, okay, let me just put a disclaimer. I don't want anybody to get hurt. I don't want anybody to get bad shit or whatever like that. But sometimes you need to buy a bad dime bag from Chewy so you realize that's the wrong community. You know what I mean? They got to figure that out, man. Like, don't get that stuff from Chewy over there, man. Get it over here.
We must have had the same dealer at some point, for sure.
Self-regulating markets, man. Like you know, the underground has and will continue to self-regulate until there's some kind of a legal framework in place, you know, for better or for worse, whatever that distant vision goal might be. You know, there's a case to be made for just decriminalization and not legalization. There's a lot of folks that would have a world in which we're not, you know, beholden to those gatekeepers. So
definitely. You know, I want to bring up real quick too, like, I think, and I'm speaking to myself here from years, like, don't delude yourself that you're doing medicine when you're just doing drugs a lot. I think that there's a fine line there. Like, there's something about the sense of like, I'm just going to keep taking this thing and it's medicine. And for example, at Telluride Mushroom Festival, two of the most accomplished, successful, charismatic, interesting people in the world, for my money, Juliana Furci from Fungi Foundation in Chile. She founded the first NGO dedicated to mushrooms. She's always at Telluride. She works with the United Nations, just an extraordinary person. Her and Paul Stamets, who's on the board of Fungi Foundation, separately mentioned that they both check in with mushrooms about one time a year, and they do it in a pretty intentional way. I'm not going to say that you need to do that yourself or whatever, but I just thought it was interesting. These are people whose whole lives are kind of dedicated to fungi and working with them, and they're not out there taking mushrooms 5 times a week or 4 times a month. They're doing it like once a year, and I'm sure before they probably did. You know, you hear these stories from the youth, but I think that's something I see coming up is like for example, I used to, when I was like 2010, I was in college. I went down to Peru 3 years in a row to an ayahuasca retreat. And it was very new to me. And it was like, you know, I was a psychonaut already. I had the means to go to this place. They hooked me up. And then after the 3rd time I went, I was like, you know, I see the same people here every year. And like one of them's on ceremony number 180, and they still have a bunch of bullshit in their life and a bunch of problems. And I sort of had this like awakening moment where it's like, I could probably do 2,000 ceremonies and still find a reason why I need to do another one. And I've not done it since then. And you hear that with people with DMT specifically. They'll literally say, I got kicked out of the DMT space. Like an MT cult came up to me and said, yeah, you've been here too often. So I do think that's important. And that's like, some people just say medicine, like, I'm not going to tell anyone how to live, but in my life, I've sort of graduated from that to be like, all right, if this is medicine, let's do it like medicine. And is it medicine if you need to take it 4 times a week or 8 times a week or whatever? I think that's something different, and that's okay. Just don't call it that you're like doing medicine, I think.
It reminds me of that story from like the Ram Dass yogi who he gave like a 10 strip of acid to, and the guy like didn't feel it at all because he's like already there, you know? I mean, yeah, I think there is something to that. Like, what are you trying to get out of this? What's your intention? And all of the variables set and setting that affect it.
Do you think that stems from like your individual relationship with psychedelics? Because I remember when I was younger, like my recreation, it was like having it was like having, I believe your relationship with psychedelics changes as you get older. You know, you go out and it's like, you have this party mentality and you're doing all these things. But then as you get older, like when I do it now, I'm always alone. I'm always in the dark. My family's in the other room, or they're sleeping, or they're gone, or something like that. But like, that's the way I prefer to do it. Now, of course, there's cool festivals to go and stuff like that. But the way I prefer to do it mostly is like alone. Do you think that that's because you have built a different relationship with psychedelics because you've known the terrain for so long, or it's almost like a rite of passage in some ways? What are your thoughts?
You remember Shel Silverstein's The Giving Tree?
Silverstein.
It's that, like, you're going to that tree. You got a family to provide for. You're chopping it down. You're building homes. By the end of it, you're sitting on a stump. You know, you're just there chilling with the stump, thinking and reflecting about your life. You know, you don't need all of that fast-paced stuff as when you were younger. I think there's something to that trajectory of like the different chapters and phases in life and our relationships with these tools, psychedelics being one. And, you know, breathwork. I didn't have any breathwork practices in my 20s, like at all. That was not on my radar at all. I'd heard about meditation, heard about TM, didn't know about this breathwork concept. You know, here I am in my 40s now with a breathwork practice. Like, would I have, my 18-year-old self would have been like, what are you talking about? You know, and my 18-year-old self was tripping all the time, by the way. So that was there.
I think both are valid. I think recreation is valid too. Like, depends what you want out of it. And for example, if I want to do a full send and really figure some stuff out, and I think that's very valuable, especially for entrepreneurs, kind of for anyone. But like, if you're building a business or you got your family, like there's so many moving parts to that. And one of the main things that keeps coming up with a lot of people is burnout, dude. Like, to try to stay on top of everything, you get burned out. Like, and I think everybody can relate to that who's been in that position. And I've always found like that's where I go into a high dose and I'll sit there and I'll be like, I just need to find a clear path forward because I feel like I'm spinning plates here and I don't have the energy. And then all of a sudden, from one of those high doses, there'd be such clear answers. Like, you don't need to spin that plate. That's actually like totally unimportant. Just get rid of that one. Now you don't have 8 plates, you have 7. And actually this one over here, you don't need either. And then before you know it, you're like, okay, well, I just start with this clear path. And So I think like high dose can be very important. And I do that solo pretty much exclusively. But then let's say I'm at a Flaming Lips concert with my friends and I know a ton of people who grow mushrooms. Like, of course I'm going to eat a square of that chocolate. You know, I'm going to vibe out. And when I'm doing that, like sometimes those problems get solved too, just by having fun. There's this sense of like raising your vibration, having fun. But again, I think that's something where the satire and the comedy humor comes in, because once upon a time, like I wanted to just like always go to the moon and like always just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And then I realized like the analogy I heard, which makes sense to me, is like, what if it's like one of those video games where it's self-generating and like the further you go, there's new territory. But like, is that really serving anyone? You're just on this infinite side quest now. Like, what if you just like, you have your zone here, you figure out a way to stay in that and to maximize and bring value there. And so I stopped doing the full send all the time. And, you know, now I've transitioned into a new role. I've got my son, and my wife is not a psychonaut by any stretch. And I find like this huge fulfillment being in bed at 8 p.m. and, you know, watching our shows and eating our dinners together. And it's very joyous, because I think for a long time that was like the antithesis of what I thought I wanted. It's like, I need to constantly be stimulated and doing all these things. And you grow over time, and like your priorities shift and your priorities change. So, but yeah, you better believe it. If Fish is in town and I'm going with Jacob, like I'm eating a square of chocolate for sure.
Just one?
At least, dude. Starting out, probably depends on what the potency of the cubes are in there, or the exotics.
I'll check in at set break and see what else you need. But it was literally at a fish show when I was tripping, you know, and I couldn't stop. Like, it's the cardinal sin is like, you never pull your phone out during this, but District 216 was downloading real time, man. I had to get that phone in the notes app, and I just went to town, and it just all came literally embodied at a fish show, tripping during set 2 in Dick's Sporting Goods Arena in Commerce City, Colorado. I remember it clear as day. And I mean, it was like, you know, to your point, Dennis, it could be a small amount at a recreational setting, and you could have your most profound breakthrough, or you could be in a large dose solo journey on your own and come out of it feeling like, well, I didn't get anything from it.
So we talked about like recreation and the way we grow. Shel Silverstein's Giving Tree, great book. What does that mean for you both now? Since you are both building in this space, if someone comes to Global Psychedelics Day, or they come to Micropreneur, or they come to the 216 event on Wednesdays, or they come to the Marquee event, what is it that both of you want the people that come there to learn? Like, what do you want their experience to be?
Yeah, well, for me, it's to develop your own vision a little bit. Like, I want you to come feel like, I can do this. I count my vision as important. And then we want to give you the tools to do that. So like a huge thing with Global Psychedelic Week, what gets me so stoked about it is we're connecting people in real time from all over the planet who have very likely never connected before. And I'm a big believer in cross-pollination. Like, you get people in the room, you get inspired. This person's going to say, oh, I really like what that person's working on. Okay, I'm going to reach out to them. You never know where that goes. So I want people to come and feel like they have a sense of agency and like they count. Because again, the world we live in very often says you don't count. You're supposed to get in line. You're supposed to know your position. Here's where you are on the totem pole. And I think psychedelics can be, and community can be, profound disruptors of that. I think you know, somebody who's at the top of the game probably wasn't born at the top of the game, and there's probably a whole bunch of people who helped them out. So I think we're reframing the way we think about business, and psychedelics are doing this, at least in my case, as it's not just about pure competition or anything. It's cooperation now. It's like, let's build this thing together. And then, oh, wait, I can have 5 projects. Like, I can do this thing over here, but I can also be working with this person over here. And people aren't like worried about that as much. So that's kind of where it's at with me. It's like, just try to master your craft, whatever your unique gift is. Like they say, like, if there's that other saying, like, if fish judged his intelligence by how well he could climb a tree, the fish would think it's an idiot its whole life, right? And I think that's the world that we live in, is people are put in this position and they're like, I'm no good because I wasn't good in school. I didn't get straight A's, so I'm an idiot. It's like, we don't live in that world anymore. Maybe you're like the best mechanic and it just comes naturally to you. Believe it or not, I have a mechanic friend who makes more money and has a better lifestyle than a lot of my friends with master's degrees, you know? So like, that's what I want out of these communities in Global Psychedelic Week. Is like, let's help you find your spark, and then let's help you connect that to other people. Somebody's got a tinder over here, and then this other person's got a fireplace, and all of a sudden we got this roaring fire with 3 people around it, and we'll see where that goes. We could build with that.
I love it.
Can't follow that. It's too perfect.
You can. Look, if you were 216 it changed my life, man. Going there and meeting the people, getting to hang out with you and Christian and Dennis and Caesar and like so many cool people there. Like 216 is a whole new entity that I never even knew existed, man. And I'm curious, how did you create that? Like everyone took away something so beautiful. Like how did you build that?
I mean, I don't know, actually. It's been a series of like starting with a conversation with my life partner Carrie and her actually coming up with the name and branding it one night over steak and red wine. And then I blink and almost 3 years later, here we are in Denver with over 1,100 people at an event, and Jim James on the dance floor listening to DJ Cat Walsh, who I just saw last night and play My Morning Jacket show at the Santa Barbara Bowl, full circle. But I mean, really back to Dennis, it's, again, being the container, creating the space. At first it was connect, learn, share, and grow. Come here and connect, learn, share, and grow. When we surveyed our our audience and asked them like, A, what do you want more of? What do you want less of? But also, what are you getting out of this? They told us healing. They told us consciousness expansion and connection. So those became like the values kind of subsequent to the launch that we leaned into. I would never have made a claim to say that a space like this could create healing. I didn't even recognize healing in community was, a thing possible. And now it's like mandated. It's like, how do I find more ways to heal in community? And when we were at the MAPS conference, all I could see as we went from event to event, from the actual conference to the ancillary events to the Meow Wolf to all these different, to Portals Dome, was all the different ways in which we're healing in community. With the medicine, without the medicine, with 3 people around a fire, with 2,000 people in a room, whatever it is. There are so many ways in which we are able to lean into that. And I think we've been so isolated through capitalism for so many generations that we were taught, get your own, this is your silo, stay in your little white picket fence. And we've forgotten how we evolved in community, how we've healed in community, how we need this. The pandemic showed the isolation epidemic as, sort of a byproduct of what we went through together. But guess what? We went through it together. We had the shared experience on the other end of it. So I think just leaning into that with 216 and is a little bit of a right place, right time post-pandemic. But yeah, healing in community, I guess, is the thesis of that one.
I love it, man. It made me think of like shared goals, shared sacrifice. Because everybody there, they were it seemed to me like they had their story of how they got there or what they were doing or why they were doing the thing they were doing. And they all had this shared goal. It's like I just see it as like an Ariadne thread that runs through both what you guys are doing, man. I'm grateful. So as I got this thing that I'm doing now, and I'm super stoked on it. I put this out to my Discord, and I call it the lightning round. So as we're finishing up right here, I'm gonna fire questions. I'm gonna start off here with Jacob, and it's gonna be an either or. Then I'll fire off to Dennis, and maybe we could just do them together. How about this? So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. True Life Podcast lightning round. Who would you rather have a guide for your trip, Charles Manson or Jesus of Nazareth?
Oh, neither. Pass.
I'll go with Jesus.
Yeah, right. Who would you rather share a joint with, Hunter Thompson or brew ayahuasca with Maria Subina?
Hunter Thompson. Absolutely. No hesitation.
Who would you rather have dinner with, Alan Watts on acid or Terrence McKenna on mushrooms?
Terrence.
I'll go with Alan.
Okay, nice. Who would you rather be stuck in a commune with, Timothy Leary, or would you rather be stuck in a commune with Timothy Leary or a monastery with Ram Dass?
Tim.
Absolutely. Let's get that circus on the road.
Would you rather debate psychedelics with Ted Kaczynski or AI with Elon Musk on MDMA?
Elon, MDMA.
Yeah, let's see what a narcissist on MDMA looks like. I'll go with Elon.
Would you rather ask one question to the Oracle at Delphi or to an alien hive mind on psilocybin?
Ooh,
I've done the hive mind one, so Oracle.
Yeah, I'll go with Borg.
Would you rather do 5-MeO DMT in a sensory deprivation tank or in the middle of Burning Man?
Sensory deprivation tank for sure.
Definitely, no question.
Yeah, it sounds awful in the middle of the desert. Those people.
Would you rather take Kana before delivering the Gettysburg Address or before testifying before Congress?
Testifying, baby.
Yeah, Congress, Congress.
The Congress.
Congress. Would you rather live inside a Terrence McKenna lecture forever or inside a Grateful Dead show forever?
Come on.
Dead.
Come on. That's not even a question.
All right.
But you're saying, this is with Jerry, not with John Mayer, right? Just making sure.
Guaranteed.
Okay.
All right. Would you rather be trapped on a desert island with Michael Pollan or Graham Hancock?
Graham.
Yeah, I think Graham's got more longevity.
Okay, fair enough. Would you rather join the Merry Pranksters on the bus or the Beatles in India?
Oh, Beatles.
I'll go with Merry Prankster.
Nice. Very nice. Would you rather learn the secrets of the universe from Carl Sagan or from a psilocybin mushroom that can talk?
Mushroom.
Can the mushroom be there to correct Sagan?
Sagan might have been the mushroom, to be honest with you. I don't know. Would you rather replace every politician with an ayahuasca shaman or every CEO with a Buddhist monk?
Both sound bad.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. They all need replacing, that's for sure.
They do need replacement. Gentlemen, I'm so stoked on your guys' time. I'm super grateful for the work you're putting out there, for the light you're shining on people, for being awesome human beings and spending time with me in the True Life podcast. I hope everybody checks out the Mycopreneur in the District 216. But before I leave, let me throw it back to each of you for a moment to tell people where they can find you, what you have coming up, and what you're excited about.
All right, I'll start since I got a little hand gesture from Dennis. I'm reading the nonverbals today really well, the body language. So yeah, if you all want to connect with District 216, get on our weekly newsletter. Just go to district216.com, scroll to the bottom, sign up on our newsletter, please. Follow us on Instagram. If we don't get banned by Meta, we'll be there. And otherwise, every Wednesday night in Santa Barbara, if you're in the Southern California area, it's worth the drive up the coast. It's beautiful. If you're coming from LA, hour and a half north, come on a Wednesday. Come listen to a lecture, connect in a round table, do a workshop, do a screening. And then the exciting stuff coming up, definitely our marquee event. Our next marquee event is actually our 10th marquee event since 2023. So we're hitting double digits. Really excited. It's death and psychedelics. We're approaching it kind of from a trifecta point of view, sort of like our day-to-day death and dying where we shed relationships or careers or whatever. Then you have the ego death component, of course, in a psychedelic journey, and then end of life treatments and therapies. So the death and psychedelics is going to be a great one. Santa Barbara, September 27th. It's a Saturday. Make the trip out. And then otherwise, we'll be out at MJ BizCon in December. I'll be on a panel with Gina Wenzel and some other folks talking about psychedelics out there. And we're going to do some psychedelic playhouse light activities ancillary to the conference, to the convention center. So hope to see you out in Vegas.
Yeah, thanks both of you. And thanks for all of the people listening and watching now and in the future. And I have Mycopreneur as kind of my main hub. It's the only one called that. So we've got platforms, the .com, but I'm pretty active on social media. The newsletter is great. I just put one out this morning. I cover the global mushroom entrepreneurial space, a lot of information that doesn't get platformed anywhere, that's directly linked to the people making the products or doing the research, et cetera. So every Thursday that goes out. And then every Thursday I have an online group called the Mycopreneur Incubator. All that info is available in the newsletter. We meet up. You can connect directly with the movers and shakers in the global mushroom entrepreneurial space. It's yielded so many cool cross-pollinations, real life projects, paid opportunities, article placements, etc. So yeah, join us anytime. You too as well at the Mycopreneur Incubator. And yeah, shout out. Let me know that you heard this. Find me on Instagram or shoot me an email, mycopreneur@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. And thank you both very much again.
All right. Thank you both. Hang on briefly afterwards. To everybody else within the sound of my voice, for everybody that participated, for Ranga, Desiree, Brian, and Neil, thank you so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all we got. Aloha.